The topic at hand is authentication, and I've titled this session the Authentication Game because in many ways it has become a game. Our first panel, oh wow, I've got a chair, thank you. I'm old, but I could stand. There we are. So it's become very much a game insofar that we heard about the commercial model pressures from the anti-fraud side of things. So organizations are very much looking for alternative ways, and we're talking about massive global organizations are looking for changes. But let's wind back the clock. Let's talk about the key channels, and we're talking about India here. Andre, of course, with your operations around the world, your customers truly are global, and of course other organizations here operate in other countries as well, but yours really are really global, 100% from day one, and many messaging companies are using your platforms. So what's going on in the authentication world here in India? Rashmi, what channels are being used today? What pressures are there that might not have been mentioned yet? What are you seeing going on?
So James, all our experience in India right now, of course, SMS is the major channel of communication, when you are sending in OTPs. For authentication, of course, it is the major channel of communication, but we are finding in other ways and means, basically, to make the system more fraud, resistant. So today, OTPs, though they are being sent, but fraudsters are also finding ways and means how to capitalize on it. And SMS being the channel of communication which is being widely misused, I would say. So what I feel, today it is a time that we move from OTP to OTP-less.
But Rashmi, can I just ask you, in the UK, I've noticed in the past year or two, it never was like that, but it's making literally front page news now. So someone had their life savings, an 82-year-old had their £6,000 life savings stolen through SMS smishing. Yes. A bad attack like that. Is that getting a lot of publicity here in India as well? Is that something more recent with that level of publicity? If it is, what's happening on that score?
So the same is happening in India as well, wherein you are getting a message the recent message that I received was, your electric connection is gonna get disconnected at night. It's like, when you are doing something and it's like you take, the instant response to is, basically you click on the link, most of it, and many people have lost so much of money out of it. So this is actually the menace that is happening, I guess.
But is it getting more publicity in India?
Of course, it is now getting more of, yes. And we have so many awareness campaigns by the government of India also. You have so many, these ads on television telling people not to click on the links that come as part of the OTP, or you get any such message, don't pass on the OTP to anybody else. Yes, that's something which is happening in India.
Okay, thank you. Dax, over to you. So I keep hearing from lots of people, I go to lots of events around the world, and lots of people say, oh, you should never use SMS for authentication now at all. And they're going, oh, SMS, bad. What would you say to that?
Look for voice flash, I think this is one kind of instant drop call, in fact. Regarding that, I can say one thing, that if I wish, I would like to accept this authentication method. Yes, I will go with that. But when I will be in other enterprises.
But is SMS all bad?
Yes, of course, with SMS itself.
No, not of course. Hopefully not. For the industry here, we've got problems. But it's not all bad, is it? Surely.
No, not like that. Actually, I have worked with even banking industry for 10 years. I can understand when these are kind of fraud and fraudulent messages that we are collecting, and OTP, and they are required some personal details or authentication ID or something like that. Some kind of fraud cases can be happen. So this is happening, in fact.
Can I just ask from Hansa C? Do you know what? I didn't even ask people to introduce themselves. Shame on me on the panel. I'm assuming everyone knows who everyone is. But I think people have heard of your company, definitely heard about Surf today. If people haven't, they've very much been asleep. And lots of people will know about Alaris Labs. But Hansa C Equity, what do you do? And what's your take and what's your touch point on the world of authentication?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So Hansa Security basically is a data-driven digital martech company. We provide end-to-end marketing solutions across the digital platform, A to Z. with in-house digital agency, in-house data scientists to do modeling and stuff, execution. We claim ourselves as technology and domain agnostic. So we are partners with all the OEMs, pretty much all the large names you can think of, certified guys, and we provide services across the board, including strategy. Answering your question, James, I think the previous session we had, one of the speakers rightly mentioned, gave a timeline starting from 1952 till date, how the banking system has evolved, right? The payment system has evolved, etc. I think here also we are seeing an evolution. There was a time when a single sign-on, a single factor authentication was the preferred way. Then we moved to two-factor authentication. Then we have gone to single sign-on, where you just log in once, and then you get access to the entire chain of systems. They're all linked. Now we have come to the passkey, ways. So all the apps in your mobiles, etc., are all passkey types, where you just put a PIN or a particular sign and you log in. Two-factor authentication is still being used very widely, especially in the banking system and the payment system. But then where people are trying to be innovative is to add multiple layers of two-factor. So not only when you log in, you have a two-factor, so you put an OTP or whatever. Also at critical junctions or points where you do some transaction, you add another leg to the authentication system. However, the flash voice calls, like O365, for example, Microsoft uses flash voice calls, right? So when you want to log into your O365 system. So those are all very convenient things, because SMS, while it is still a cost-effective method, it is still possibly serving to a large extent from a data security place. Like, so I being a CISO and a DPO, I would still minimum vouch for a 2FA, at least an OTP, if not if you cannot have a passcode or some other way. But then there's also a thin line between security and user convenience. If you're going to add if you're going to add all security and make life difficult for an end user, the end user will stop buying your product, and thereby you will not need the security anymore.
This friction thing is.
So I think there is always that gap apart from the cost element, right? And a lot of these things, like using biometrics, face, thumb, is always nice to have. But then there again, you end up having this data security issue. Where are you going to store the biometric data where it gets authenticated with? So these are some challenges that we face. I don't think there's either a right or a wrong answer. It has to be directly a function of what is the end game, what is the money we are willing to put, and what are the legal regulations of not meeting certain guidelines. With India coming up with a data privacy bill, these things will now start, people will start taking these things more seriously and start implementing, because again, in the earlier session, the speaker rightly said that there's a cost to non-compliance. So rather invest here than pay the money and have my organization shut down tomorrow because of non-compliance.
Thank you. Andre, if we come to you, you've got your microphone there. Come to you. It should be on, hopefully. Your clients are around the world using your platform to send SMS globally. Are you hearing from them any concerns about perhaps the volumes of A2P SMS decreasing and their business decreasing because of these pressures coming? Could be the commercial model, could be the perceived or real lack of security in SMS, because after all, SMS was never developed to be two-way. That's the important thing. It's been around 30 years. Are you seeing that from your customers, those concerns?
A two-word answer, not really. As simple as that. So basically, the SMS authentication is still out there, and I'm sure it's going to remain there for quite a few years. But SMS is not the only tool, the only means of authentication our customers are using. Flash calls are definitely out there, more and more, and I'd like to raise my voice for flash calls, because they're neither good nor bad, they're just a technology. And the fact that aggregators lose money does not really make them bad. And so, to me, flash calls are just another telecom commodity, and we just need to think all together and work out a strategy to approach them.
Well, this is what MEF members came up with. So our Fraud and Revenue Assurance Working Group, so the members put together some of them in this room, worked on the actual document, put it together, and that was the second most downloaded MEF report of the whole year on A2P, and that associated webinar was the second most watched webinar in MEF's 22-year history.
Well,
So
you know
it's
where
a
it
big
hurts.
topic. So, yeah, and that's what the members were saying. So it's neither good nor bad. It's just another means of authentication. And like everything, as long as you have that visibility and are able to control it, you can then decide what to do. Do we bury it, or do we monetize it?
True.
And so that's what MEF members generally have been saying.
Indeed. Yeah, to us, we are software guys, we are solution providers, and to us, all means of authentication are fully equal. I mean, we're truly democratic here.
And that's a really, really good point. Dax, coming from yourself, clearly the SMS side of things is strong. Is there room? We've all been talking so far as if the days of SMS being used for authentication days are numbered because of pressure from other areas. What about, and it was talked about on the first panel, and I'll be talking about it this afternoon on one of my panels for sure, the growth, because there are surely millions of organizations here in India, never mind the world, who are not using any real means of two-factor authentication beyond email. It was mentioned by Shika as well, from Airtel, about the email side of things, and other speakers were talking about email being used still. And email actually, by transaction number, is still the largest single channel in the world. It's only when you add SMS and chat apps together does that become larger than email. So do you think there really is growth for SMS here in India for two-factor authentication?
Of course, yes. There is, I think, in my opinion, there are multiple authentication processes are available. But two-factor authentication, when we are talking about voice calls, it is just an instant call to your voice number, mobile number of user. And that will come and go. But you can see only in your phone log as a missed call. That one benefit is that there will be no charge. No costing will be added to this. But one thing is that MNOs should go with this, and they can share some firewall also, so prevent these all security, and they can provide security to users, then enterprises and all.
So you agree?
So in that case, I think the people who are afraid that voice flash is not that much acceptable in next couple of years. It may be possible, like in Juniper, I think last couple of years, they have researched there, 2021, it was 60 million volume for voice flash. And they have expected by 2026-27, it will be 130 million.
Yeah, that's bigger. But you would accept, you agree with Andre that every channel should be viewed as being neutral, and there is neither a channel which is good nor bad ultimately. It's just how it's used and when and for which audience. Because we've got to accept, surely, that not every person has access to the internet or mobile data and a smartphone. And so much of the world talks as if everyone has that. And the reality is, even in so-called developed countries like the UK, the amount of times I don't have reliable signal on my phone, it's, let's say, it happens regularly. So this is where SMS comes into its own. But Rashmi, we touched upon the issue of biometrics and things like that. Are biometrics and other authentication means like that used a lot here in India yet? What's happening?
Well, James, it's not being used much in India right now, but it's being like we are moving towards that, wherein we are analyzing the biometric behavior of the person. Like they are basically
It's the behavior. It's not my fingerprint as such. It's more the behavior pattern.
Yes. So that is, I was just reading one case study wherein it's not from India, but it is a case study which we can actually have a look at and can have something like that in India as well. So it was like, there were so many frauds that were happening in US, wherein the banks, once they were onboarding their customers, like in that process of onboarding, the fraudsters were getting information from the customer, and they were actually able to get a lot of money transferred to their account, right? So what they did, they came up with a BioCatch sort of a application. So what it did, it used to analyze the behavior of the person, right? How they move, how the cursor dynamics, the keystroke dynamics, the place that they are in. So they actually analyzed around 2,500 data points, and then they found, like initially, like the case study says, once, like in 1 week of the implementation of BioCatch application, they could actually set alarm to around 300 cases there in US. They could save around $300 million of money. And it was around, the transaction that happened, 100 cases were such which were like they could have been taken care of because of that. So basically what I mean to say is, from the traditional way of authenticating people, wherein it was something which is the knowledge, wherein you have the password, or you have something like the secret question that you have, to something that you possess, which is the device of the people, like you have mobile phone or the laptop, to something which you are, like the biometrics. So it is like, we can't think of everything in silos. It is to be a fusion of, all or maybe two. So you have the password, you have the device, and you have some, say, voice analytics of that person. You know how the person moves, from which place he is doing most of the transactions. So those parameters should also be taken care of once you're authenticating the user.
Andre, what about the rise of the false positive? I'm going to be hosting an event next week in Dublin, another MEF event, business messaging, and there's a session about exactly that. Because with more fraud, then it can get very, very tempting to perhaps get a little bit too harsh in your protection methods. And it's not just disrupting the customer experience, it's destroying the customer experience. Are you seeing, it could be personally yourself as an individual subscriber, or generally with your clients, or you're feeling from, because I know you go to, your team certainly, you go to many industry events around the world. Are you seeing this risk, or this becoming real, the false positive?
Yes, absolutely, because in our product line we have an SMS firewall. So your question we have been asking ourselves quite a few times. How to prevent the false positive answers, the false positive blocking of like good messages. One of the possible answers is using the artificial intelligence, the self-learning machine, self-learning engine that we, human beings, would feed with the correct examples more and more and more, showing more and more details of like proving good messages and making it understand the very small particular details of like good messages and making it able to differentiate between good and bad. Well, we ourselves don't always manage to do that, but anyway. Yes, so that's one of the possible directions as we see it. But again, the artificial intelligence is something that should be handled with care, with great care. So we are yet to live and see whether or not it's going to be the final answer. Probably not.
Ajit, what's your take on artificial intelligence?
Yeah, today that's, I think, the hot topic, right? Italy just banning ChatGPT, and Europe following suit. UK is also trying to get some acts in place. So I think AI is obviously there to stay. This is going to be a transition. It will never be a straight line. It will be having, troughs and curves. But then I think more and more companies are relying on AI and AI-driven technologies to prevent frauds. It's not only with regards to the authentication, even with SEIM tools for network log monitoring. Everywhere, we are using AI because there's a human limitation.
But Ajit, is it really AI, or isn't it just big data?
No, so it is a combination of both. it's a combination of both, where you do have ML plus AI involved, where you make the system learn over a period of time. At the same time, the fact that you are now able to do edge computing, whereas you are able to derive data points from the edge rather than waiting for the data to come 2 days later. By then it is too little, too late. So right at the edge where the act was done, you collect the data and you immediately detect a potential fraud rather than reacting after a fraud has occurred, right? So as Rashmi rightly said, today, we in India, there are a lot of frauds that are happening where, a slightly less educated person is put into a corner by a fraudster who says that please share an OTP that you have just received on your mobile, right? And you end up clicking a link or sharing that OTP. So then in that case, even that two-factor authentication fails because you now ended up sharing OTP. So therefore, biometrics come into play, right? So but then in biometrics also there's a failure. Like just yesterday I was reading a news where a family was trying to take a thumb impression of a dead lady on a will, right? After she passed away, right? There it was flashed all over, and there were photographs in the big papers. So now what do you do with that, right? So now the next thing is where, as Rashmi also pointed out, where now the way we type, the pressure with which we type, right? The speed with which we type, the speed with which we talk, the voice analytics part. So all those things are now being used where AI and ML comes into play big time. And all this thing is done with big data, right? And that is how you're trying to prevent fraud. And I think the mantra always is prevention better than cure. So you try to preempt something rather than trying to actually solve the problem later on when it's too little, too late.
I see that in the UK as well. So I've got an HSBC account, and my PIN is literally, my voice is my password. That's what I've got to say. So it'll be the speed at which I'm saying it, everything going into that. Dax, rich messaging. So we know what happened last May to RCS, or rich business messaging. So that service was stopped due to a high level of spam. Pleased to say that service has been relaunched. We have Google with us today. We've got Vodafone Idea in the house, the launch operator, or relaunch operator, should I say, for RBM here in India, potentially Google's largest market in the whole world. So that's rich messaging. You've got WhatsApp. So WhatsApp has grown massively here. It's got 2 billion subscribers worldwide. But I've been hearing from MEF members, there's more WhatsApp fraud and spam, etc., here in India as well, because it's used so much. What are you seeing with regards to the use of rich messaging channels like WhatsApp, like potentially RBM again, for the delivery of one-time passwords or two-factor authentications? Is WhatsApp being used for 2FA here in India a lot? And what's the future of rich messaging channels for 2FA and authentication, from your perspective?
In that case, I think, as I said, that we need to take help from operators or the person who has designed that API, in fact, and we can set firewall over that to determine which is fraudulent or not. We can set up this process from MNO sites or the person who has set up this API.
But you can't if it's a chat app.
Hello?
But you can't because it doesn't touch you. This is the point. So with WhatsApp,
in that
with
case,
RBM, yes, potentially, but WhatsApp doesn't.
Yes, of course.
So, but is it being used a lot for authentication here in India?
Yes, of course, yes.
It is. And why is that? Is it from the commercial model perspective because it's cheaper than SMS, or what are the principal reasons for WhatsApp being used?
Especially in WhatsApp, I think that is not a cheap than SMS. WhatsApp, there, Meta is always giving us one rate for all of the separate countries. And the other, all aggregators or partners, tier 1 and tier 2 customers, they are charging their own charges again. Like if for India, Meta is giving 48 paisa, then all other people, all other partners with Meta, they are charging, they are adding the profit margin, 5 paisa, 10 paisa, whatever it is.
It's not the commercial model driving people to use, or what is it? How come people? It's the customer experience.
Yes, it's the customer experience. So when you are using WhatsApp, for authentication, so you are primarily not all the time is sending an OTP on WhatsApp. You are sending a link which the customer clicks and he's directly authenticated. So he has to do nothing, just a click and he's done. So basically the experience is promoting other channels of communication to come into picture. Like you rightly said, the rich man.
So even though from a commercial model perspective, it may be higher
Yeah.
than SMS or any other channels, enterprises use it or want to use it because it's the customer experience.
Yes.
And it's Android, and again, it's a very Android-heavy country. India, if we were talking about Sweden, I've got another event there at the end of May, it's the converse. They are absolutely Apple. The absolute majority has Apple devices there. So, for example, A2P Flash, the user experience is not so great with an iOS device.
So, James, primarily what is happening, depending upon the user's past behavior, right? Say, for example, I had been using WhatsApp. Somebody else is using SMS. So basically, the enterprises, more or less, they are actually predicting basically what is the requirement of the customer, and they are authenticating the customer that ways as well. So once like you are, using, say, for example, you are going to install an app for of a given customer. So what it does, it asks for you, like, what do you want to go for OTP less? So, and if you does that, so, they authenticate you in that way. So that's the way it is moving now.
So actually asking the subscriber, seeing what they're using the most, and possibly even asking them how they would like to be
And
authenticated.
predicting as well, right? Sometimes you send, you use multiple channels of communication and the customer is not responding with one. So you decide like, this is not actually the channel of communication to be used to authenticate him or for sending OTPs and all. So that's the way it is happening.
Andre, that's the way it's happening here in India. What's going on in the rest of the world?
Well, I agree with the point that the means of authentication depends a lot on the user experience and user habits. But if we look at the behavior patterns of our carrier customers in different countries, I would say that the primary factor defining the choice of the delivery path, delivery technology of authentication messages is the pricing. Yeah, we see that in some countries where RCS is cheaper than SMS, and it's not a rare occurrence, our customers convert conventional SMS into RCS messages. It may be OTP, just plain text messages, whatever, and send them as RCS messages because it's less expensive. The same goes for WhatsApp. I hear WhatsApp is changing their pricing strategy, and this is not going to be favorable for SMS again, because, well, SMS is expensive. Yeah, I think many of the people in the room will agree to that. SMS is getting more and more expensive. I understand the reasons for that. We all want like bigger margins. There is nothing illegal in that, like in flash calls. Yeah, but this is the response from the market, I would say. Yeah, if a conventional technology becomes too expensive, there are other emerging technologies to fill in the gap.
Yeah, there was a rather large sign about 30 seconds ago saying we've got 2 minutes to go. I know we've got something saying we've got 4 minutes left. We don't. We've got 2 minutes left. Dax, your final words on the world of authentication. What do you see happening here in India in the next year or two? Will there be continuing pressure on SMS with RBM coming back? Will RBM, Rich Business Messaging, RCS, be used for authentication more? What do you think will happen?
For India, for RCS, I'm not very sure, in fact, but yes, outside of India, a couple of people, they are now turning up to RCS. This is, as per my knowledge, in last 6 months, I think we had collected some good queries on that part. Regarding 2FA, I think voice flash authentication is definitely, in my opinion, in both ways, it is somewhere very much beneficial as well for enterprises or some other services. But for some banks and financial institutes, it might be very much cautious, and after getting some good awareness to customers and people, I think we can go with that.
Thank you. And Ajit, your final words on the topic. A rather large topic, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the straight answer is it's going to be all of the above, right? I think there's a place for all of these technologies. It's going to be directly a function of cost. It's going to be directly a function of the purpose for which it's going to be used, the kind of data it's going to secure, right? The more costly the data is, the more technology-focused initiatives are going to be put in place, and where you can live with a single sign-on or a simple SMS authentication, you would rather live with it because possibly that is cheaper. I mean, today you could also use, now in place of a SMS, I could also send the same OTP via email. So we do that for many of our applications where it's a simple email that sends the same OTP, right? So end of the day, it's an OTP, it's an OTP. Because in an SMS, you don't sometimes, as you rightly said, receive it when you're indoors. You have to come out to receive it. By then, it's too late. The clock has moved on. So I think it's going to be all of the above. And I think the situation is going to drive. Of course, WhatsApp and RCS has now come with this OTP and transaction model effective the last month. Things have gone live. So there will be competition to SMS, but SMS will still stay because possibly today that's the cheapest medium. Next, after email, that's possibly the cheapest medium. So it's going to stay forever.
Okay, thank you. And Rashmi, your final words on the topic.
So I feel, James, the dominance of SMS is going to go. So they are all other channels of communication. They are actually going to take, go side and hand in hand with it. So basically, as Ajit was saying, it is all the above. But predominantly, the dominance of SMS should go. I mean, as it is this is visible to me right now. That's what I wanted to say.
Excellent. Rashmi, thank you very much. Andre, any last few words from you?
Yeah, if I were to put my stake, I would vote for push messages and flash calls. But yeah, the good old SMS will definitely remain. Yeah, the good old SMS will remain for years because, as you correctly stated, there are quite a lot of places in this world where still there isn't a reliable mobile internet connection, and the SMS is the only technology that can ensure delivery of one-time passwords and important messages of the kind. So yeah, the SMS will remain.
That's it. So folks, there you have it. This was the last session before lunch. I'd like to thank my speakers. There was a last-minute speaker change because Narayan Govindram Jaisingh from vServe couldn't make it. Andre stepped into the breach, so thank you very much to you.
A pleasure.
For stepping in, and really nice to see you at the event. Dax, lovely to see you. Ajit and Rashmi, always a pleasure as well. So these have been the speakers on my session. And now